My analysis offers some worthwhile clues to the kind of regulatory reform that's needed. First and foremost, since markets are bubble-prone, the financial authorities have to accept responsibility for preventing bubbles from growing too big. Alan Greenspan and others have expressly refused to accept that responsibility. If markets can't recognize bubbles, Greenspan asserted, neither can regulators. And he was right. Nevertheless, the financial authorities have to accept the assignment, knowing full well that they will not be able to meet it without making mistakes. They will, however, have the benefit of receiving feedback from the markets, which will tell them whether they have done too much or too little. They can then correct their mistakes. Second, in order to control asset bubbles, it's not enough to control the money supply. You must also control the availability of credit. This can't be done by using only monetary tools. You must also use credit controls. The best-known tools are margin requirements and minimum capital requirements. Currently, they are fixed, irrespective of the market mood, because markets are not supposed to have moods. Yet they do. And the financial authorities need to vary margin and minimum capital requirements in order to control asset bubbles. Regulators may also have to invent new tools or revive ones that have fallen into disuse. For instance, in my early days in finance, many years ago, central banks used to instruct commercial banks to limit their lending to a particular sector of the economy, such as real estate or consumer loans, because they felt that the sector was overheating. Market fundamentalists consider that crass interference with the market mechanism, but they are wrong. When our central banks used to do it, we had no financial crises to speak of. The Chinese authorities do it today, and they have much better control over their banking system than we do. The deposits that commercial banks have to maintain at the central bank were increased 17 times in China during the boom. And when the authorities reversed course, the banks obeyed them with alacrity. Or consider the internet boom. Alan Greenspan recognized it quite early when he spoke about irrational exuberance in 1996. But apart from his famous speech, he did nothing to avert it. He felt that reducing the money supply would have been too blunt an instrument to use, and he was right. But he could have asked the SEC to put a freeze on new share issues, because the internet boom was fueled by equity leveraging. He didn't, because that would have violated his market fundamentalist principles. Third, since markets are potentially unstable, there are systemic risks in addition to the risks affecting individual market participants. Participants may ignore these systemic risks in the belief that they can always dispose of their positions to someone else. But regulators can't ignore them, because if too many participants are on the same side, the positions can't be liquidated without creating a discontinuity or a collapse. They have to monitor the positions of the participants in order to detect potential imbalances. That means that the positions of all major participants, including hedge funds and sovereign wealth funds, need to be monitored. Certain derivatives, like credit default swaps and knockout options, are particularly prone to create hidden imbalances. Therefore, they must be regulated and, if appropriate, restricted or forbidden. The issuing of synthetic securities needs to be subject to regulatory approval, just as ordinary securities are. Fourth, we must recognize that financial markets evolve in a one-directional, non-reversible manner. The financial authorities, in carrying out their duty of preventing the system from collapsing, have extended an implicit guarantee to all institutions that are too big to fail. Now, they can't withdraw that guarantee as long as there are institutions that are too big to fail. Therefore, they must impose regulations that will ensure that the guarantee will not be invoked. Too big to fail banks must use less leverage and accept various restrictions on how they invest the depositors' money. Deposits should not be used to finance proprietary trading. But regulators have to go even further. They must regulate the compensation packages of proprietary traders to ensure that risks and rewards are properly aligned. This may push proprietary traders out of banks into hedge funds where they properly belong. Just as oil tankers are compartmentalized in order to keep them stable, there ought to be firewalls between different markets. It's probably impractical to separate investment banking from commercial banking, as the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933 did.